Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight we're exploring another fascinating piece of history that time forgot. We're slipping into the silent shadows of medieval Europe, where people whispered about the quiet ones, those who moved like drafts of cold air and left nothing behind but questions no one wanted answered. You're not a knight or merchant, you're something less noticed, more unsettling. Someone who learned the silent trade in a monastery that offered more than prayers, how to see without being seen, how to end a life as gently as snuffing out a candle flame. Welcome to your life as a medieval assassin, quietly, of course. Segment 1, The Orphan's Path. Let's start not with greatness, but with forgetting. You are 7 years old, born in a village whose name even the maps don't bother with, somewhere just south of the known, far west of the remembered. The year, maybe 1347, maybe it's just the year everything ended. The Black Death rolls across Europe like God exhaling, and if he's counting souls, he's not counting slow. By autumn, the world is thinning out, leaves falling, bodies following. Your parents die on a Tuesday, because of course it's a Tuesday. Mother first, then father, 3 days later. Their bodies, carefully wrapped, join the others on the cart, rattling through narrow cobblestone lanes with a rhythm so steady it becomes background music, a dirge you try not to hum. The living number fewer every morning. Once, the village boasted 200 souls. Now, maybe 30 if you count the cats, and at least one of those is a ghost cat, or so the baker claims. Most houses stand open, doorways yawning like mouths caught mid-surprise. Inside, everything remains: a cup, a half-mended shirt, someone's wooden comb. It's as if everyone simply stood up and forgot to return. You learn quickly how to become as insubstantial as dust motes, how to blend with the rising mist at dawn. You don't knock things over, you don't speak unless spoken to, and you definitely don't answer when Brother Thomas calls for orphans in need of spiritual charity. You've seen what happens to children who trust too soon, how they go into the monastery with voices and come out months later with eyes that have stopped searching for the sun. You become an expert in the art of vanishing. Bread is stolen, never taken. You are so quiet that the baker counts his loaf. Cold is your constant companion. It doesn't hate you, it just refuses to be ignored. Like a stray animal, it follows you everywhere, curling around your bones at dusk and purring in your ear at dawn. You wrap yourself in any scrap the wind hasn't stolen, sleeping lightly, always listening for footsteps, never sure if they bring rescue or the sort of charity that requires a different kind of silence. Winter, as it does, arrives early. October brings snow and the promise of hunger sharper than any knife you've ever seen. Your limbs grow thin, your shadow lengthens, and you start to wonder if you're becoming a ghost. Another lost child drifting the empty houses, haunting the world that forgot your name. Still, you endure. Endurance becomes your prayer, whispered each dawn, not to God exactly, but to the part of yourself that refuses to vanish entirely. When the church bells ring, you wake. You thank no one but your own stubbornness. Some days, that's enough. The strangers notice. So is the Feast of All Saints, a time when the living pretend not to be afraid of the dead. Candles flicker, prayers rise, and for one line between memory and mourning gets thin enough to step across, that's when you notice him, a figure in brown wool, neither monk nor merchant, standing so still in the cathedral shadow that you almost mistake him for a statue. He's watching you, not with suspicion, but with the faint curiosity of someone who spots an echo where there shouldn't be one. You're busy being invisible, slipping between groups, learning the art of existing without being noticed. You watch the wealthy widow grip her purse just a little tighter when boys walk past, the merchant whose lips move silently as he counts his coins for the third time this hour, the priest who weighs the collection plate with a hand that knows exactly how many silver coins should be in it, and precisely which ones are missing. But this stranger, he sees you seeing. He doesn't look away when you meet his eyes. Instead, he watches as you catalogue the exits, the shadows, the places where people stop paying attention. His attention is steady, quiet, a warmth from across the nave that isn't exactly comforting, but isn't cold either. He's older, maybe 40, maybe simply aged by weather and worry. His hands are large, broad-palmed, but they move gently, as if they know both prayer and something much heavier. You notice eventually the thin scars on his knuckles, the absent-minded way he draws a cross on his palm as he waits. 3 days pass. He never speaks, never intrudes, never does more than nod when the guards greet him, or the bishop hesitates mid-sermon as brown wool flickers past. He is presence distilled, a guardian who has forgotten which side of the heavens he belongs to. On the 4th day, he approaches. His voice is softer than shoes on old stone, sharper than a winter draught sneaking beneath the door. Child, just the one word, but it lands with the weight of earth on a grave. How would you like to serve God in ways others cannot? He does not touch you, does not threaten, bribe, or coax. He stands, patient as the statues, waiting for your answer. And you know, this isn't an abduction, it's a job offer, with an interview process you've already survived by existing. The monastery of St. Draconis, he says quietly, takes in certain children who understand that some prayers must be whispered. Very, very quietly. You notice his scars again, the rough hands, the eyes that have seen too much, hands that have carried more than candles and Bibles. There is no real choice to make. The decision feels less like choosing and more like remembering a door you've been walking toward all your life without realizing. You nod, and the stranger, who might be your first real teacher, simply turns and leads you into a new chapter, one that begins in silence and the promise of a different kind of service, the hidden brotherhood. The journey takes 11 days, through forests where autumn leaves carpet the ground in shades of dried blood, past villages that have learned to keep their doors locked after sunset, along roads that wind through landscapes God finished but forgot to bless. Brother Matthias, as he calls himself, speaks little, but his silences teach you more than most conversations. How to read the language of wind through bare branches, which shadows offer concealment and which betray movement. The art of walking for hours without leaving readable tracks. He prays at regular intervals. But these aren't the memorized recitations you heard in village churches. These are personal conversations, quiet negotiations between a man and whatever listens, when good people
Your cell, and they call it that, without irony, contains a narrow bed, a wooden cross, a wash basin, and a small window that looks out onto the herb garden, where Brother Augustine tends plants whose names you'll learn, along with their very particular properties. That first night, you lie on stone, harder than frozen ground, but for the first time in months, you're not cold, not hungry, not afraid of disappearing, because here you realise disappearing is the point. The last thing you hear before sleep takes you is Brother Matthias in the corridor, speaking quietly to someone else, their words indistinct, but the tone familiar, like merchants discussing very specialised goods, very particular services, very necessary transactions. You sleep and dream of shadows that move with purpose, of prayers whispered over sharpened steel, of a God who understands that sometimes salvation requires very quiet angels, but dreams are only the beginning. When dawn seeps through your cell window, Brother Marcus waits, silent as the stones themselves, his presence a promise that your true education starts now. The monastery, you realise, has been watching you, even in sleep, measuring your breath, your stillness, your readiness to become what they always knew you could be. Underscore, 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 underscore. Segment 2. Lessons in Sacred Silence. The Art of Disappearing. Dawn comes, not with bells, but with Brother Marcus, standing silently beside your cot. He doesn't speak, doesn't move, just waits until you sense his presence and wake naturally. Your first lesson begins before you open your eyes. Prayer, he says, in a voice soft as altar cloth, begins with breath, not the breath that fills lungs, but the breath that fills silence, that moves between heartbeats, invisible, essential. You learn to breathe as if breath itself might betray you. Slow inhales through your nose, expanding your ribs without lifting your shoulders. Exhales, so controlled, so measured, that a candle flame at arm's length wouldn't flicker. Breathing becomes meditation. Meditation becomes prayer. Prayer becomes preparation. Brother Marcus demonstrates walking, not ordinary walking, but movement that honours silence. Your foot, he explains, must kiss the ground before committing weight. Feel for loose stones, weak floorboards, anything that might speak your presence to unwilling ears. You practice for hours, bare feet, on stone corridors, learning to read the texture of surfaces through your soles, cold stones that ring like bells when struck carelessly, warm spots where sun or hidden passages change temperature. Your feet become your eyes in darkness. The monastery reveals itself slowly. Corridors that branch into other corridors, chambers behind chambers, passages that exist in the spaces between official architecture. You learn that this place was designed by someone who understood the sacred geometry of secret which shadows offer concealment, which stone pillars could hide a man's full form. Even worship here requires tactical awareness. Brother Marcus teaches you to read rooms before entering them. Every space, he explains, speaks before you do. Listen to what it says about the people who inhabit it, their habits, their fears, their blind spots. You practice with your cell, learning to enter, and know immediately if anything has been disturbed. A prayer book moved 1 inch, a water basin turned so the handle faces differently, your blanket folded with corners not quite matching, your precise technique, your body, Brother Marcus continues, must become an instrument of silence. Every movement deliberate, every gesture economical, waste nothing, reveal nothing, except what serves your purpose. The exercises grow more complex, walking past sleeping brothers without waking them, moving through the kitchen while cook prepares meals, never alerting him to your presence, climbing stone walls in the garden, silent as ivy, growing toward hidden sunlight. Your muscles change, becoming leaner, more precise, like a bowstring, drawn to perfect tension. Your reflexes quicken, your hearing sharpens until you can distinguish footsteps from heartbeats, prayers from promises, truth from necessary deception. Sleep transforms into a lighter state, resting while remaining peripherally aware. You learn to wake at the first sound that doesn't belong to feign unconsciousness, while cataloguing every noise, every movement, every intention in your vicinity. But silence and shadow are only half the art. Brother Marcus watches your progress with approving eyes. Your body knows discipline now, he whispers, one morning after prayers. Time for Brother Augustine to teach your hands a different kind of precision. The path leads through corridors that smell of earth and secrets, past chambers where dried herbs hang like prayers made visible, to a garden where knowledge grows in the careful space between healing and release, the garden of life and death. Brother Augustine's garden is not just a patch of dirt behind a monastery. No, it's a living pharmacy, an outdoor confession booth, and possibly a crime scene, depending on which section you wander into. He tends his plants the way other men pray, gently, with hands that know both blessing and boundaries. He moves through the rows like a man conducting a silent liturgy, every step a verse. Every herb, he says one morning, plucking leaves shimmering with dew, serves God's will. Some heal, some harm, some. Here he glances at a patch of something that looks like it wants a lawyer. Simply helps souls transition a bit more peacefully to their eternal rest. The front beds are full of safe things: sage for infection, willow bark for pain, lavender for sleep, the kind that comes gently, without drama, like a prayer someone else says for you. These plants live closest to the chapel, bathed in sanctified sunlight, nodding politely when monks walk past. But if you venture past the wooden fence, every garden needs boundaries, and this one more than most. You find the necessary section: nightshade with berries so black they seem to swallow light, foxglove, beautiful but best admired from a distance, wolfsbane, which apparently does what it says on the label. This is the part of the garden where plants grow with their backs to the wall, and no one makes small talk. Brother Augustine's lessons are a mix of botany and theology, with a dash of quiet mischief. He grinds dried flowers into powder as fine as communion flour, murmuring, God provides everything his servants need, tools for healing and tools for delivering suffering. You're not sure if this counts as mercy or plausible deniability, but you nod anyway. You learn to measure out doses so tiny they'd shame a miser. The difference between easing pain, granting sleep, and, well, ensuring that sleep is more permanent is about as wide as a grain of rice, blessed or otherwise. Precision becomes your new prayer. There's comfort in rituals, even the quietly terrifying ones. Grinding herbs is meditative. Stone mortars worn smooth by centuries, each motion slow and deliberate, as if the plants themselves might file a complaint if you rush. You whisper little prayers as you work, not so much asking forgiveness as requesting a receipt for your good intentions, just in case. Brother Augustine speaks about plants as if they're parishioners. Some are quick, graceful even. Others prefer to take their time, offering a window for last confessions, final prayers, and, if all goes well, a dignified goodbye. He marks the files with symbols known only to the initiated. No labels like, danger, do not eat. If you know, you know. Blessing, not killing, he insists, while corking a bottle with the seriousness of a man bottling fog. Every preparation made with love, with genuine care for the soul it will. Shepherd home. You practice on mice, who are, as it turns out, not volunteers. The first attempts are awkward, apologies to the mice. Brother Augustine is patient, correcting your grip, your measure, your soft-hearted hesitations. Compassion, he says, requires competence, which is a kind way of saying, try again, but better. The garden is a slow teacher. Plants obey their own clocks, not yours. You learn to wait for the right phase of the moon, for the scent that means a leaf is ready. Patience becomes a muscle. Timing, everything. Soon, your hands are steady, sure. You measure, mix and store preparations that might, someday, serve a very specific kind of ministry. One that most people hope never to need, but are grateful exists in the shadows, just in case. The weight of blessed steel. Some nights you think monasteries are mostly about silence and drafty corridors. But then, midnight comes, and you learn they're also about ceremonies you won't find in the parish newsletter. Father Benedict performs the blessing in the deepest chapel, where the dust itself is holy. Candles flicker in patterns that probably mean something, but mostly seem like a fire hazard. Your blade lies on the altar, newly forged, but looking older than sin. Brother Thomas made it, his beard singed, his hands steady. The iron came from earth where martyrs bled, which feels like a fun fact until you realise you're supposed to sleep with this thing under your pillow. This blade, Father Benedict intones, sprinkling holy water that sizzles on metal, serves not man, but God's will. It carries mercy to those in need of urgent salvation, and justice to those who corrupt his creation. It's unclear if he expects the blade to respond, but he keeps going anyway. 13 prayers, each older than the last, layered in Latin. You kneel, stone cold beneath your knees, as sacred oils anoint a weapon that will, soon enough, anoint you in return. When he finally hands you the blade, it fits so perfectly in your hand that you wonder if it waited for you. The handle is wrapped in leather, blessed by 7 saints, none of whom, conveniently, are available for comment. Brother Marcus begins your training. Night sessions, naturally. The courtyard cloaked in darkness, your breath clouding gently in the air. The blade becomes part of you, like a second, sharper shadow. Steel, Brother Marcus whispers, demonstrating a cut so smooth you can barely hear it slice the night, must move like divine will, inevitable, compassionate, final, no hesitation, no cruelty, no suffering not already written in the margins. You practice on straw men, because the monks are not completely without a sense of humour. The blade finds gaps between ribs, the soft hollow beneath the skull. You learn the map of the human body that pressure points that mean mercy, the arteries that mean release. Knowledge that in the wrong hands would be monstrous, but you tell yourself, are only here for the right reasons, or at least for reasons someone once called right. The blade requires daily rituals, cleaning, oiling, prayers whispered with each stroke, as if polishing not just steel, but intent. The sheath is blessed, the storage precise. If you ever forget its gravity, just look at your hands, they remember. Day by day, practice turns to instinct. Your arm knows exactly how much force is enough. Your heart slows, your breathing steadies. The blade moves the way prayers do, unnoticed, quiet, final, and somewhere in the hush, you realise you are becoming exactly what you were chosen to be. Not a monster, not a hero, just a very particular answer to a question no one says out loud. Months flow like water through monastery stones, each dawn bringing new lessons, each dusk settling deeper into your bones, until the morning when Brother Abbott's summons arrives. Not as surprise, but as recognition. Your training was never an end, but a beginning. The monastery has been patient, but the world has needs that cannot wait, and you have become the answer they always knew you would be. Segment 3. Your first holy work. Brother Abbott calls you to his chamber on the feast of St. Michael. It's fitting, really, that the day meant to honour the archangel who casts down demons also marks your debut as a different kind of angel, not the harps and halos sort, but the kind whose wings are folded in shadows and whose prayers end with silence. The chamber is small, lit by a single candle. Its flame dances, but can't quite hold back the gentle darkness. Brother Abbott sits behind a desk, carved from a tree old enough to remember when saints still walked barefoot. His hands, folded, calm, rest atop a letter, sealed tight, as if it might leak secrets, if left unattended. Alfonso di Marco, he says, the name falling like a stone into still water. A grain merchant in the town of San Angelo, wealthier than most nobles, but the children in his streets starve for bread. He slides the letter across the desk. The parchment is heavy, thick with seals and intentions that don't belong. In polite sermons, your fingers recognise the weight. It feels less like paper, more like a key to a door you can never shut again. He hoards grain, Brother Abbott continues, especially during harvest failures. Sells only to those who can pay. Whatever he demands, the poor eat grass and praise God for the privilege, while Alfonso counts coins, one from hunger. It's not a confession, no one is asking forgiveness here. Instead, Brother Abbott carefully describes another man's sins, the habits, the household, the route through San Angelo's narrow lanes, information gathered by brothers who travel in rags, not robes, blending in, listening, returning with news, justice by committee. He sleeps, Brother Abbott says, in the eastern tower of his villa, third floor, corner room, facing the cathedral. Sits by his window at midnight, counting his profits, as if gold could muffle the noise of an empty conscience. You study the map, hand-drawn, every building, every alley, every creak in the cobblestones. Someone spent weeks watching, waiting. The reach of the monastery is long, and its memory even longer. God provides, Brother Abbott says, as he seals your commission. Red wax drips onto parchment, looking for all the world, like a memory of blood. Opportunities for justice, when earthly courts fall silent. Alfonso serves mammon, not mercy. Heaven requires correction. You nod because there's nothing too old for their faces, eyes that know hunger, sharper than any blade. By evening, Sant'Angelo rises ahead, a prosperous town built on Alfonso's grain and God's silence. Magnificent churches, golden altars, but the faithful who fill them wear robes thin as hope. You take lodging at the monastery of Santo Spirito. Brother Superior sees your papers, nods quietly. Some letters don't need reading. Some missions don't need words, just a silent prayer and an open door. The approach. 2 weeks of patient observation. You become Brother Francis, Sant'Angelo's most forgettable fixture. A monk in brown, a gentle shadow on the street, visiting the sick, offering blessings, handing out medals that glint ever so humbly in the morning sun. You're invited in for prayers, not dinner, but no one seems to mind. In a town where faith burns brighter than the evening stew, you find yourself welcomed but not noticed. It's an art form. Alfonso's villa perches on the hill above it all. 3 stories of stone and pride, a mansion with enough confidence for everyone inside. It looms the way a spider does when the flies forget they're on a web. Gardens are maintained by servants, paid mostly in promises and the sort of bread that arrives a day late. The walls aren't just for keeping thieves out, they're for keeping conscience out too. You watch, you wait, you keep your notes folded in the sleeves of your robe and your judgments folded deeper still. Alfonso's morning prayers take place in the cathedral, always in the front pew, reserved for those who can afford a good view of God. He thanks heaven for blessings, never mind how those blessings arrived. At midday, he inspects his warehouses, grain locked away behind doors that require 3 keys and 0 compassion. The guards change shifts with clockwork precision, enough to suggest they've never actually worked with a clock. You spot the gaps, brief as grace, a narrow window between certainty and oversight. Evenings, Alfonso is alone in his tower room, counting profit by lamplight into the smallest hours. His ledgers gleam beside stacks of coins, every calculation a prayer answered for himself, never for the hungry outside. Servants have their own rhythms. Cook retires early, gardener snores in the shed, night guards patrol the grounds, never the house. There's a kind of pride that builds its own blind spots, a kind of faith in locks that forgets about ladders and silence. You study the bones of the building, stone walls with finger holds, ivy as old as regret, windows that trust wealth for protection. The kitchen opens onto a network of servant corridors, little arteries of opportunity, built by men who knew the wealthy prefer service they never see. Brother Augustine's preparation is measured for Alfonso's weight, calculated with the precision only 2 weeks of surreptitious menu watching can provide. Enough to ensure peace, nothing more. Your blade, blessed steel, rests beneath your robe. It is not heavy, but you feel its presence, the way you feel the memory of a secret. The night is moonless, velvet black. God in his wisdom has arranged the heavens for your work. Even saints understand. Some ministries are best performed in shadow. The gentle ending, midnight at Santo Spirito, ends with quiet prayers. Brother Superior's blessing lingers, not quite saying what everyone already knows. The streets of Sant'Angelo sleep, trusting in the sort of peace that comes when nothing ever happens. You walk, gardens muffling your footsteps, flower beds trimmed for beauty and plausible deniability. Even the gravel seems designed to make no sound. The ivy supports your climb, each leaf a silent witness. You ascend as quietly as a prayer that isn't ready to be heard. Alfonso's window is unlatched. Pride opens more doors than humility ever could. inside, a gentle breeze, a rumour in the dark. His room smells of old wood and newer money. Ledgers open across the desk, gold coins stacked like tiny tombstones. This is the price of survival, written in margins, calculated in heartbeats. Alfonso sleeps. His face is peaceful, the kind of peace that only ever visits the well-fed and the deeply unexamined. His breathing is steady, undisturbed by hunger, untroubled by memory. You stand beside his bed, a silent reckoning. His hands are soft from counting, not creating. His robe could feed a village for a month. His sleep, unbothered by prayers that never made it past his gates. Brother Augustine's herbs have worked. They coax him deeper into sleep. A gentle slide from this world to whatever comes next. No struggle, no fear, only a hush, like the pause before an answer. Your blade moves once, precise, merciful. You find the space between heartbeats, the place where angels slip in and souls slip out. Alfonso simply stops breathing, as if God himself signed the order. You kneel, whisper a prayer, not just for him, but for everyone hungry tonight. You ask for mercy, and maybe, just a little bit, for understanding. You leave as quietly as you came. Villa to garden, garden to shadows, shadows to dawn. Sant'Angelo will wake to the usual hunger, the usual hope, but one account will be balanced at last. You walk away with the weight of ministry, not pride, exactly, just the slow, silent knowledge that sometimes serving means letting go with the gentlest hand possible. Segment 4. The Burden of Shadows. Dawn arrives quietly, not with triumphant bells or the shouts of villagers bustling into market, but with a hush that seeps through the stones of Santo Spirito's chapel, settling in the cold air just above the altar. You kneel, still, small and silent, on flagstones polished by the knees of so many before you, while the first thin shafts of morning light pass through stained glass, colouring your hands in soft blues and fractured gold. Up above, painted angels gaze down, their faces caught between joy and secrecy, as if each one holds a story too important to speak aloud. Your knees ache. The stone is unforgiving but familiar. Your body still, but inside, thoughts shift and tumble. Not guilt, exactly, just the careful sorting of things, too heavy to carry at once. It's here, in this liminal moment, when night's shadows haven't quite withdrawn and the world is only half awake, that Father Benedict appears. He never makes an entrance. He's simply there, a gentle presence, as much a part of the chapel as the incense-smudged walls. He settles next to you on the stones, his robe trailing like autumn leaves in a breeze that never comes. Tell me, his voice as soft as altar cloth, about Alfonso's final moments. Did you see peace on him? Did mercy find its way in before justice closed the door? You tell him, softly, letting your words drift into the hush between candles and sunbeams. You describe how Alfonso's face slackened, how there was no panic, no fight, just a gentle letting go, as if sleep had simply forgotten to finish its sentence. A passage quiet enough to seem like forgiveness. Father Benedict listens, his eyes half closed, his hands folded in a prayer that feels less like a rule and more like a resting place. He nods, once, deeply, the sort of nod you only earn by witnessing 100 stories just like this one. God works, he says, through many hands, the surgeons, the farmers, the soldiers, and sometimes the hand that moves quietly, ushering souls from broken earth to gentler judgment, every tool in its season, every task, holy when done with care. Absolution is given in Latin, ancient syllables that ripple across centuries, carrying with them the weight of 1,000 similar mornings. You expect penance, hard, lengthy, laced with sharp reminders. Instead, 3 Hail Marys and a His wealth will be scattered among those who need it, as bread is scattered among birds in winter. Sometimes death is simply the last thread in a tapestry of survival. You take communion, the wafer resting on your tongue, fragile as the first frost of morning. The wine, warmer than the dawn, reminds you that all sacraments have two meanings. One for the world above the table, one for the shadows beneath. Afterward, the monastery's wine helps to quiet the echoes. Alfonso's face, peaceful in death, flickers behind your closed eyes like an image in an illuminated manuscript. Not quite haunting, but not forgotten. A prayer with no clear ending. Sleep, when it comes, is deep and dreamless. The kind of rest that only visits those who have fulfilled their portion of the divine plan. At least for one night. If you dream at all, it is only of cool corridors, the hush of candlelit stones, the sense of walking a path worn smooth by others who have served in the quiet, difficult shadows. When morning breaks fully, Brother Abbott's approval arrives as it always does. Not as a speech, not as a song, but as a single, quiet nod in your direction, the kind that says, the work is hard, the work is necessary, and you have done what was required. You rise, feeling the weight of another day, the burden of shadows settling over your shoulders, not light, but no longer lonely. The masks you wear, your new identity, doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in, soft and quiet, the way dawn pushes at the corners of night, slowly revealing a landscape that was always there, just waiting beneath the dark for permission to be seen. Brother Francis, the mild, earnest monk who offered prayers and vanished into the background, dies a suitably modest death. The cause? Fever, of course. Monks are forever succumbing to fevers, the kind that come on quietly and disappear one name at a time. His papers are burned with solemn ceremony, the smoke curling upward in the chapel, a gentle signal to anyone watching that another story has reached its end. But, while Brother Francis is laid to rest, another man steps into the space he left behind. You become Marcus Benedictus, travelling scholar, European by reputation, rootless by design. Your new documents are beautiful fictions, forged seals pressed into wax, signatures looping in elegant hands you've never met, each lie written in careful ink, another prayer that your story will go unchallenged. There are references from universities you've never seen, blessings from abbots who may or may not exist, and long lists of subjects, some real, some invented, in which you are said to be an expert. It isn't just the documents that change you. Brother Thomas supplies a scholar's wardrobe, robes dyed in serious scholarly colours, deep browns and muted greys, fabric chosen not just for respectability, but for the quiet message that you belong everywhere and nowhere. The clothes fit differently, looser, with more layers than strictly necessary. Inside each fold, Brother Thomas has sewn narrow pockets, perfect for carrying tools, notes, or things that should not be seen by anyone unprepared. You receive a pilgrim's staff. It looks like any other, weathered wood, smoothed by miles of walking. But Brother Thomas, who loves puzzles, has hollowed out a secret compartment, just wide enough to hide a coil of wire, a vial of blessed oil, a slender dagger, the sort of things a scholar might never need unless they live in stories like yours. The pack you carry is heavy with manuscripts, copies of theological treatises, medical diagrams painstakingly inked by monks who knew more about human anatomy than any respectable cleric should. Maps, folded and refolded, show not only the main roads, but the small paths, unofficial, unblessed, that wind through woods, past forgotten shrines, and into cities where new names are minted as often as coins. questions, how to nod and purse your lips in a way that suggests you're considering not just what is said, but what is left unsaid. Theologians are masters of ambiguity, and now, so are you. Conversation becomes a kind of dance, moving between safe topics and safer silences. You debate doctrine, but always keep track of the exits, the physical ones in the walls and streets, and the conversational ones, the little turns and gestures that let you slip away when questions come too close. You become many things to many people, a merchant when the situation requires. Your satchel fills with a few small, unusual goods, spices, bolts of rare cloth, ink made from exotic roots, enough to be plausible. Sometimes you're a diplomatic courier, trusted with messages wrapped in so many layers of wax and ribbon that no one would dare peek inside. Each identity is a mask, but each mask is also a story, and you practice the backstories until they are second nature. Where you were born, what you believe, what foods you dislike, what saints you pray to in times of trouble. You invent friends and family, places you have lived, small scars from long forgotten accidents, all little threads to catch the attention of anyone inclined to ask. With practice, slipping between roles becomes easy, as simple as changing vestments before a new service. You find yourself shifting your walk, your tone, your very sense of humour. Some masks are serious, some a little sly. Sometimes you're open and earnest, sometimes guarded, all according to what the moment asks. There is a comfort in this, strange as it may seem. The world expects masks, even rewards them, as long as they are worn with grace and care. But at night, when you remove the scholar's robe, untie the staff, and fold away the merchant's satchel, you remember who you are beneath it all. Not a collection of names, but the monastery's quiet answer to questions no one else will ask out loud. Gradually, you notice the network, others who wear their own masks, who greet you with a certain angle of a ring, a gesture with a prayer bead, a phrase in Latin that doesn't quite fit the conversation, travellers who recognise the subtle codes, an extra flourish in a scholar's insignia, a merchant's seal placed upside down, a wink given where none is needed. They are everywhere, in cities, in lonely chapels, in market stalls and university halls. A brotherhood scattered across Europe, growing quietly in the dark spaces between laws and legends, the seeds of silent justice sown and tended by careful, hidden hands. And so you journey onward, never quite yourself, never quite a stranger, carrying all your stories, all your masks, knowing that your true face, whatever it may once have been, belongs, now and always, to the shadows, the network of whispers. If you listen carefully enough, history's silence is never quite empty. Letters arrive, always when least expected, never by the same route twice. Some come tucked inside merchant ledgers, where the price of saffron hides an invitation in ink the colour of midnight. Others slip in with diplomatic pouches, the sort sent between bishops, sealed in red wax, carried on horseback by riders who pray for safety but never question their cargo. Still others come hidden among the notes of scholarly debate, a scrap tucked inside a theological treatise, a margin marked in a monk's steady hand, where a single word means the difference between ordinary news and a summons from the shadows. The codes are everywhere, if you know what to look for. Biblical verses, safe enough for the uninitiated, but every so often a certain word stands out, written in a slightly different shade, or underlined with a dot just heavy enough for a travelling mind to notice. Sometimes it's saints' names, arranged in an order that means nothing to anyone but you. A call to action, a whispered warning, a simple stay away that only the right eyes can read. And then there's Brother Matthias. He is everywhere and seems someone the world decided to ignore. He never greets you by name, never breaks the spell of anonymity. Instead, a brief nod, a glance, a coin tapped 3 times against a table, enough for the initiated to understand. As you move through the world, you begin to realise that signs are everywhere, if only you can slow your heartbeat enough to see them. Churches with stones arranged in patterns that make no sense to ordinary parishioners, a triangle in the nave, a spiral carved behind the altar, subtle signals to those who know which saints watch over which secrets, merchant houses with small marks, carved just at the edge of a doorframe, a cross, a flower, sometimes just a simple notch. To anyone else, it's wear and tear. To you, it means safe place, a cellar where you can sleep for a night, a storeroom where a cup of water waits. Sometimes it's a code for more than shelter, for information, for medicine, for passage across a border best crossed unseen. The brotherhood you serve is vast, a tapestry of faces and lives, woven together by necessity and a kind of faith the world has mostly forgotten. It stretches beyond monastery walls, into the back rooms of merchant houses, the quiet corners of noble estates, even the confessional, where the priest's ear is as sharp as his judgment. Some members of the brotherhood know only as much as they need. A baker who passes you bread and, with it, a piece of paper folded into the crust. He never asks your name, never looks you in the eye. A physician who treats your wound, never once inquiring how the injury happened, his hands steady as he bandages what earthly law cannot explain. A knight who stirs up trouble in a marketplace, his raised voice and waving sword drawing every eye, giving you the moment you need to slip through a side door, leaving only the faintest trace behind. You, Marcus Benedictus, now more legend than man, become a story whispered in the halls of abbeys and the wine shops of distant towns. A scholar who knows when justice requires a gentler hand. A wandering diplomat whose words smooth over disputes, whose letters are said to carry the weight of forgotten saints. A merchant who always has what's needed, never too much, never too little. A man whose name is never quite the same twice. Assignments come in all sizes. Sometimes it's a simple thing, a name, a place, a night when justice is needed. Other times, the work is an orchestration, layers of effort, weeks of preparation, the quiet gathering of information, the careful placement of people and moments, all so that the world can tilt just slightly toward justice, even if no one notices the shift. You bring correction to corrupt bishops in Normandy, their greed for silver shining brighter than their faith. You travel to Bavaria, where tax collectors starve villages and call it providence. You slip through Venice, the air thick with salt and secrets, to uncover merchant guilds that have turned famine into currency, calculating the cost of each life as if souls were bushels of wheat. No letter ever finds you in the same place twice. Sometimes they come tucked inside a loaf of bread, the crust scored with an extra mark you're trained to recognise. Sometimes, in the heel of a shoe left outside your door, the message stitched into the lining. Each is filled with intelligence, maps drawn by men who travel with eyes open, schedules compiled by women who have learned the value of a passing word, routes described by those who notice the details most traders ignore. The network is a religious order unto itself, each member devoted to saints whose names you whisper more than pray. Saint Michael, whose sword delivers justice when no earthly hand will. Saint Gabriel, the messenger, whose news is seldom what anyone wants to hear. Saint Raphael, whose healing is permanent, whose medicine can be eternal. The strangest thing, you never meet the others, not really. A glance across a market square, a brief, almost imperceptible pause while buying parchment, the way someone lingers at the store necessary. That's your good morning, your be well, your yes, you are not alone. A nod, a gesture, a single word pronounced with a slight emphasis. These are the handshakes and signatures of your secret world. And so, you drift through ancient cities and new budding towns, part of the world, yet always one step to the side. The brotherhood exists between the lines, within the spaces that faith forgot, but necessity remembered. Not heresy, not quite, just a different interpretation, a version of service so subtle, even the Vatican would need a decade and a dozen scholars to prove it wasn't simply zeal carried too far. You grow used to carrying secrets, the way some carry rosaries, each bead a mission completed, each silent pause a moment of darkness you bore for others. Faith measured, not in confessions made, but in burdens carried well. The monastery is your anchor, the one place you can always return, where Father Benedict waits, not with judgment, but with gentle questions and deeper understanding. Your confessions are quieter now, not a list of sins, but a sharing of weights, a mapping of shadows, a hope for absolution in the only way someone like you can know it, through purpose. Prayer deepens, no longer just words to the sky, but breath drawn before a difficult decision, a whispered Our Father before knocking on a door that might open into danger or sanctuary, a Hail Mary for steady hands, a silent plea that the next target truly deserves heaven's attention, because you will not judge lightly. Sleep, when it comes, is gentle. No faces haunt you, no cries echo in your dreams. Just the cool hush of candlelit corridors, the certainty of stone underfoot, the soft weight of linen sheets. Sometimes you wake with a name on your lips, a name you once sent ahead into the dark, and you find yourself wishing, just for a moment, that someone prays for you too. Seasons turn. Missions pile behind you like pages in an illuminated manuscript. Spring in the city-states, where justice blooms with the first flowers. Summer in the highlands, where justice is a little rougher, a little less poetic, but no less holy. Your skills sharpen, not just the ones that end lives, but the subtler ones. Listening, watching, discerning the difference between the truly wicked and the merely lost. Mercy for the mistaken, correction for the corrupt. You become an expert in the art of letting the world change, one small, quiet moment at a time. Wherever you go, the network provides a warm meal, a safe bed, a listening ear that knows when not to ask questions. Sometimes a physician who bandages your wounds without expecting your history. Sometimes a stranger who leaves a loaf of bread and a kind word when you most need to remember why you do what you do. You grow more fluid each year, a scholar one day, a merchant the next, a wandering monk, a courier, a diplomat whose papers are always in order, a guest whose stories are just true enough to pass inspection. Each mask fits a little easier. Each role you play is done with the kind of conviction that comes from believing that the story itself is as holy as the work you do. And, oddly, the burden grows lighter as you carry it. Because you learn to believe, in the quiet, honest corners of yourself, that you serve something far greater than your own understanding. Your hands do God's work, even when God's work must be done in secret, in places where the law of men does not always reach. You find faith, not in understanding, but in the act of service itself. And so, as the sun rises over another quiet city, you pull your hood a little lower, pick up your staff, and slip once more into the stream of the world. Another whisper, another mask, another chapter in the long, hidden story of divine necessity. You're drifting beautifully through these ancient shadows, where faith and necessity dance together in candlelit corridors. Tap-like, if these whispered histories help you sleep. The network of whispers, if you letters slip quietly into diplomatic pouches, sealed in red wax, stamped with crests that are both protection and warning, carried across muddy roads and broken bridges by riders, whose prayers are as constant as their silence, and some come stitched between the lines of scholarly debate. A single word out of place in a treatise, a scrap tucked between pages, the margin of a manuscript fluttering ever so slightly, as if whispering your name. The codes are everywhere. If you know how to let your eyes go soft. Biblical verses, the kind any parish priest could recite. But if you know what to seek, a word slightly darker, a letter thickened by a trembling hand, a name in a list that doesn't quite fit the rest. Sometimes it's a saint's name, woven into the order of things. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, not just for protection, but as signposts. You learn to read these signs as if they were prayers. Messages, camouflaged in plain sight. A call to action, a whispered warning, a simple, wait, or not this one. All disguised as holy routine. And always, there's Brother Matthias. Some days, a merchant in Florence, his laugh rising above the talk of prices and piety. Other days, a pilgrim in Prague, rosary beads flickering through his fingers, his lips moving in the rhythm of someone who has learned the value of silence. You see him in shadowed cloisters and sunlit markets. Hair different, beard grown or shaved, but the same eyes, the same gentle, measuring gaze that saw you all those years ago, when you were nothing but hunger and hope and a name nobody bothered to write down. He never greets you by name, never breaks the spell. A coin tapped 3 times against a table, a tilt of the head in a crowd. That is all you need. And as you walk through new towns, old cities, places so small they're just a pause between river and field, you start to see the signs everywhere. Churches with stones arranged in patterns that make no sense, a triangle in the nave, a spiral behind the altar, merchant houses with symbols carved into lintels, barely visible beneath a century of paint and dust. A cross, a stylized flower, a tiny diagonal mark. To the unknowing, nothing at all. To you, a secret mapped into architecture. Here is shelter. Here, a night's safety. Here, a message waiting in the bottom of a wine bottle. Or a loaf of bread with the crust sliced in a way only you would recognize. The brotherhood is everywhere. A web spun of necessity, patience, and the quiet kind of faith that doesn't need cathedrals to prove its worth. It's in the baker who slips you a crust with a note folded inside, who never asks why your hands shake or why you leave before dawn. It's in the physician who binds your wounds with steady fingers, whose silence is a gift more precious than healing. It's in the knight who raises his voice at a market, drawing every eye, while you slip past with a bundle beneath your cloak. It's in the abbot whose blessing lingers a little too long, the merchant whose receipt is written in an alphabet only 2 people in the city can read, and you, Marcus Benedictus, now part legend, part rumour, become a story whispered at abbey doors, a name spoken in the kitchens of noble houses, a memory poured into a wine cup when the shadows grow long. A scholar, gentle, erudite, whose lectures are rumoured to resolve disputes before they start. A merchant who always has just enough, never too much, never too little. A courier whose sealed papers carry the weight of saints, though no one remembers which saints or why. Assignments come in all shapes. Sometimes it's a single name, a single street, a single night, a blade, a prayer, an end. Other times it's a slow tapestry, layers of messages, hands brushing past hands in crowds, weeks of careful work, people placed and moments planned until the world nudges itself a little closer to justice. You find yourself correcting a bishop's greed in Normandy, undoing a tax collector's hunger in a shoe left at your door is more than a forgotten comfort. It is a message, stitched into the lining, a route, a name, a reminder that someone else is watching the same stars as you. The network has its own order, its own liturgy. St. Michael's sword for justice, Gabriel's word for warning, Raphael's balm for healing, or for the final mercy. Their names are whispered more often than prayed, a chain of protection, a litany for those who can never afford to be seen. Strangely, you never meet the others, not truly. You pass in markets. A scholar's sleeve touches yours for a second too long. You linger at a stall, see a face half turned, hear a word drawn out a shade too slowly. That's all. A glance, a breath, a pause. It is enough to know you are not alone, enough to steady you on the nights when silence feels too much like forgetting. And so you drift, a ripple in the stream of history, never the hero of the tale, never the villain either, just one more whisper, one more mask, a thread in the invisible tapestry of what must be done. The brotherhood exists between the lines, in the pauses between prayers, in the spaces between laws and legends. Not heresy, not quite, just a faith subtle enough to slip through the cracks of even the holiest buildings, the kind that needs no cathedral because it lives in the shadowed corners, on the breath between two candles, in the hush of footsteps on cold stone. You grow used to secrets, carrying them like others carry rosaries, each bead a memory, each silence a promise kept. Your faith is not a confession, but a burden, one you have learned to shoulder, one that grows lighter with every act of service, with every night spent beneath a sky that has watched 1,000 such stories. The monastery is your anchor, the only place that knows your true name, where Father Benedict listens without judgment, where confession is not an absolution, but a gentle sharing of the weights you cannot put down. You learn that prayer is not just words to the sky, but the slow, careful breath before a dangerous door, the hope that your hands will be steady, your judgments true, your soul spared from the hunger of regret. Sleep comes easily now, not because you are untroubled, but because you have learned. With each season, each mission, each soft greeting from a stranger, that you are part of something larger, older, more merciful than any law or creed. You dream only of candlelit halls, of quiet corridors, of footsteps that echo, but always somewhere the soft sound of another's prayer may be for you. Seasons pass, missions pile up behind you like pages in a story only the stars remember. You sharpen not just blade and poison, but patience, the skill to see the line between the lost and the damned, to show mercy when you can, to be justice when you must. You're drifting beautifully through these ancient shadows, where faith and necessity dance together in candlelit corridors. Let yourself sink deeper into this quiet world, where your breathing matches the rhythm of monastery bells, where your heartbeat slows to match the footsteps on stone. The story settles around you like a warm cloak, each memory of shadow and service becoming softer, each lesson in silence becoming your own gentle sleep. Dream of candlelit corridors, if you dream at all, of prayers whispered over blessed steel, of mercy that moves so quietly, even angels forget to applaud. Rest now in the peace you've helped create. Sleep well, faithful servant, until dawn.